very much. Unfortunately, you can't see me, but I'm in hospital right now. I just finished dialysis a few minutes ago.
Wole, I
Yes.
got this. Please, let me take care of this. Okay.
Unfortunately, you can't see me.
It's all right. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Medical Mondays with Dr. O. I think somebody needs to mute themselves.
Yes, I'm trying to look for the mute button.
Not you. You're good. I don't think that was from you. So, welcome again. I am Toyin Okpesami. I'm a physician, family practitioner, HIV specialist, and I treat addictions in Maryland. I enjoy learning on Medical Mondays. Today, though, this is a different program. It's a little bit emotional for me. We'll see how it will roll. The family here, Medical Mondays family, you know how things go. That, we're real. We deal with topics that we discuss from the heart and learn together. Today is very personal, as I said, and it is about suicide, but it is not just because it's about suicide that is so personal for me. There are many more reasons. So I'm going to start tonight's program by just keeping us abreast of the damage suicide is doing in our society and how rampant it is. We must not take our eyes off it anymore. We got to do something. And that's the purpose of tonight, because we're going to come together as a village, as we always do, to see how we can avert suicide and meet needs. So in the South, they call suicide Monday morning blues because they link it to spirituality. Actually, depression is a chemical imbalance that can lead to a host of negative things like suicide. Having an open mind is necessary to help show that there's depression and to help slow down the epidemic of suicide. We will talk about suicide in general, but please be aware that these issues are rooted in part in individuals from childhood. For this reason, I will emphasize children and adolescents in my statistics. I can share my screen so you can see the statistics, or, just read it out. You know what? I'm not going to bother, because I want to get our speaker to speak and give him a break as quickly as I can. So 48,000 people in 2021. Suicide is a leading cause of death in the United States. And I said 48,000, just like that, because it was responsible for over 48,000 deaths in 2021, 12.3 million in 2021. So in 2021, an estimated 12.3 million adults seriously thought about suicide. 3.5 million made a plan, and 1.7 million attempted suicide. Data shows that suicide deaths increased by 2.6% between 2021 and 2022. These stats are all online. So what is suicide? Suicide is death caused by injuring oneself with the intent to die. A suicide attempt, though, is when someone harms themselves with any intent to end their life, but they do not die as a result of their action. The causes of suicide are many. Suicide is connected to other forms of injury and violence. For example, people who have experienced violence, child abuse, bullying, or sexual violence have a higher risk of suicide. Being connected to family and community support and having easy access to healthcare can decrease thoughts of suicide and the behaviors. So that brings us to why we're here tonight. Community, this is important. I wanted to go into the men's mental health and the impact of suicide in men, but I'm going to stall. I may discuss that later if need be. I'm going to revert to introducing a speaker tonight. This is the first time I will bring somebody on who is actually experiencing the issue we're discussing as you know, and as important as suicide as the speaker. So I met Dr. Wole Akpose about 6-7 weeks ago, virtually. It was introduced to me by text by Dr. Malcolm Fabi, one of my darling brothers. I was asked if it is possible to find him accommodation because he was going to be evicted from where he was. So stuff like that, I'm like, yeah, sure, I can look into that. We can do that. And I called him. We had a 2-hour conversation that blew my mind. So who is Dr. Wole Akpose? He's the founder of Sigma Group, an IT management consulting firm, an electrical and computer engineer by training. He has PhD in electrical and computer engineering. Dr. Akpose was the CEO at Morgan State University in Maryland and a member of the Maryland Health IT Policy Board from 2010 to 2014. A cybersecurity and IT governance expert with CISSP and GEIT certifications, you know, all those big things. I have no clue what they are. He has them all. Dr. Akpose has contributed to several IEEE standards, IT governance standards, and IT security frameworks. He is 6 Sigma Black Belt certified and also holds a Lean certification. With several years' experience leading 6 Sigma projects and training others on Lean and 6 Sigma, Dr. Akpose is also a Balgre's Criteria of Excellence examiner. The list goes on. I can keep reading his bio, but I'm going to summarize this to say that this is a young man who, you can see, PhD holder, left Maryland, decided to start his own, company, and in Oregon, I believe, and things happen. I'm going to leave him to discuss that with us. But I was looking for a place for Dr. Akpose. I had 2 people in mind that I thought him leaving or moving in with either of them will complement his accommodation there. One of them said he was still thinking about it. The other one didn't think it was a good idea. None of them really threw it out completely. So I started looking at nursing home, assistant living places, and then things started happening in my corner, in my arena. And I took the advice of my darling counselor, who had told me to know when to shut down. I did, and shut away from the world for a bit. Well, last Sunday, not this Sunday, a few days ago, the Sunday before, I got a call from Dr. Akpose, and he was apologizing, thinking he had offended me. I reassured him that he hadn't. He didn't hear from me because I had personal issues. I had 3 people die around me. One, my uncle in Chicago. I'd been back and forth to New York, to Chicago, and it's just been busy on my end, and that I could not, call him or text him. He had been texting me. I just saw all the text messages. Bottom line, he then informed me that he was calling me to tell me that I was the first voice of hope that he has had in his 7-year saga. And he was calling to let me know that he was going to commit suicide by Tuesday. This was Sunday. And because he had no other option, and that he didn't want me to hear about his death without him letting me know personally and whatever he said. So I've had patients that tell me they have suicidal ideations. I'm trained to know how to do that. This was different. I asked them to please give me 24 hours to get him a place. What was his issue? He was going to be evicted. He's on dialysis. He said, in his exact words, that he was going to die on the streets if he's evicted, but he would rather die in his bed. He said he had explored assisted death by the hospital, but it is illegal in Maryland, because he was hoping that the hospital would assist him and then harvest his organs. But it's illegal in Maryland, so he couldn't do it. And dialysis on the streets, it is true. He's going to die on the streets. But he said he would rather die in his bed, that he had no choice. Like I have done, he had called nursing homes, different agencies without assistance. At that point, nobody had even responded to his call. He had called homeless shelters, which he wouldn't survive in an homeless shelter anyway. And so I asked that he gives me 24 hours. And I reminded him of the lady in the Bible who, during the famine, had very little food and decided that she was going to eat that food with her son and die. Dr. Akpose interjected at that point when I told him that. He said, Elijah showed up. And I said, you're right. Elijah showed up. And I asked him to allow the God of Elijah, who is my God, to show up, because it's the God who shows up even at the last minute. At that point, he was quiet. And I busted out crying. Everybody who knows me knows that I'm not a crybaby. It doesn't come that easy. Then he started consoling me, comforting me not to cry, and that he would hold off. He would not commit suicide. He would wait on me. I had no clue what I was going to do. I just know that God will be God. This is not a coincidence. It's got to be God, because Dr. Malcolm Fabi, who introduced Dr. Akpose to me, was coming to my house that Sunday. He had helped me to get some stuff from Nigeria that I asked if he can bring that Sunday afternoon after church, because like I told you, I really shut off from the world for a bit, but I'd rebounded. Sunday afternoon was good. I called 2 friends. We were on the phone. We were troubleshooting how we would get him a place where we will get. We decided to make certain calls to different people and then resume at 4 p.m. on a conference call, including Dr. Wole. Akpose. Dr. Malcolm came, and I shared with him what was going on. Let me fast forward. We ended up being 5 on that conference call. Dr. Wole Akpose, my 2 sisters and friends, and Dr. Malcolm Fabi. One thing led to the other. We ended up looking at extended stay America. It was one of my sisters who suggested, why don't we get like an Airbnb for at least 30 days to buy us time to get him a permanent place. And we ended up with this extended stay America. Do you know that Dr. Malcolm Fabi paid $2,000 immediately for 30 days to accommodate him? And so I had the responsibility to now have somebody to move him, and the Lord provided through another sister movers that it took 3 days to do the moving. And the management company, he talked to them, they were helpful. They allowed him to take the 3 days to move. I covered the cost of moving. And is now at the extended stay, but ended up in the hospital for something else. He was supposed to be dialyzed this morning. They just did it. It's why, you know, all this camera thing and his voice. I'm now going to yield to Dr. Wole Akpose to tell us his story, and then we'll revert back to suicide. Is it really all depression? Or are there other things that could cause this? And how can we prevent this? What are we going to do in our community? Dr. Akpose, Dr. Wole, before I yield to you, I want to say that today I found out, got a text that a 15-year-old Nigerian girl committed suicide in Silver Spring, Maryland today, this morning.
So sorry.
A 43-year-old Nigerian man, thank you, Wole, committed suicide in Baltimore 2 months ago. The list goes on. It's hitting home. Wole, go ahead. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Akpose. Thank you very much. And thank you all for listening. Yes, Dr. Akpose is very correct. She summarized these issues very clearly. But this is the point. I didn't want to take my life because I don't want to die. And I'm not depressed. What I am is calculating. I was deliberate. And in my case, I was staring at 2 forks in the road. Fork number 1, I end up on the street and I die on the street. Homeless shelter or whatever they call it. I'm still going to end up on the street and die on the street. Option number 2 is I die with some dignity at home. So looking at those options, staring them in the face, trying everything, and there were a lot of people who were trying to help me, but weren't going to solve my problem. And I'm too sick and too weak to go out on the road and find money by working on. The only way I can work is remotely on a computer. And I've explored trying to get a job. It has not worked out. What I do best is, before I got sick, when I started my company, is I would go out and do the running around the marketing and all the other stuff. And when the job comes, I and my team will do them. I don't have that luxury. I've not had that luxury in almost 7 years. It got worse over time, but that's the luxury I didn't have. And I've asked friends, I've asked all sorts of people to partner with me help me with the marketing stuff, going around and all that. And I will do the job. I have the skills, but that hasn't panned out in years. So here I am, owing almost 2 years, at least more than 15 months of unpaid rent. And I'm staring at an abyss. And so I have an eviction. I got an eviction notice earlier in July, late July, and we rallied around and tried to find a solution to that problem. A lot of people came along and tried to help me in every way, connected me with people, and set up an what do you call, a GoFundMe to see if I could raise some money. With the help of friends and family, I was able to raise about $5,000. I paid $400 in my electricity bill arrears, and then I paid $3,800 in the eviction note that was sent to me was for $3,800, and I paid it. And the goal was to try to keep working to pay the rest gradually. But just before, on the date of the original eviction, even though I had already paid the landlord the $3,800, the sheriff still came to my door, knocked the door, informed me that they are aware that I just paid $3,800. But hey, by the way, there is another eviction notice. And on the 13th of September, I have to move out. At that stage, I was confused. I don't have the $3,800, the second $3,800 to pay. And my suspicion is that they won't relent until I pay up all the amount of money. When I got a little strength a day later, and I was able to find the property manager for the landlord, she told me point blank, not in a mean way. She told me point blank that, one, she would advise me to stop paying even if I have the money, because the landlord was hell-bent on getting rid of me. I can't blame them. Who has that patience for somebody to be owing them that much money without paying? So I took the message and I tried to run around and figure out what to do. There was nothing. So we pushed everything I could do with GoFundMe, with friends, with everything else. But $50 here, $100 here, they help, but they don't amount to $40,000, which would have stopped the eviction process, but I still would have to leave at the end of December when my lease expires. So it was obvious I don't have time. And the sheriff was not going to help me. So I proceeded again to try some of the things I've tried before. I reached out to the city, and I reached out to the homeless, healthcare for homeless. Somebody had mentioned that they were supposed to call me earlier. They never did. I called them, they didn't, but I called them again, and I got a message. I spoke with a lady who said I shouldn't worry, somebody's going to call me in a day, within the next 24 hours. I waited 24 hours, elapsed. I didn't get any call. I called them back. The phone was just ringing. Nobody was picking them up. I tried Disability Rights of Maryland, and then all I got was a workaround. They don't accept call. Call the local county. I called the county doesn't accept. So it was just up and down in all directions, and nothing was moving. All I could see in front of me was eviction. And long story short, I told myself, I concluded that I would wait. I'll wait until the last minute. That's why I was waiting for Tuesday. And if nothing happens on Tuesday, rather than wait and get thrown out on the street on Wednesday, I'll take my life. because doing so would at least give me a last moment of dignity. Can't imagine being on the street, sick, and then dying on the street like a dog. So that was my conclusion. So if I was really, really, really so excited about dying, I wouldn't have to be counting the days. But I didn't want to die. Why am I emphasizing this? The idea that people kill themselves because they are crazy or sick is not always true. Sometimes people are driven to the end and they have no option. And they are actually, I have a brother on the phone who has been very kind to me in the last 6 months or so that we've reconnected. He was the rope that linked me to Dr. Akpose via Dr. Malcolm. And the first time he heard despondence in my voice, he was really sad. I didn't tell him I was going to die, but he heard despondence in my voice. This time, I didn't even bother to mention it to him because I didn't want him to just be sad for nothing. It's not like he's done everything he can. He's done everything he can, and it's been a lot. But unfortunately, that was not sufficient. Sorry, I'm in hospital. So please, ma'am, I'm in a meeting right now. Can you please give me like 10, 15 minutes?
So,
This
is report I'm handing over here. So,
sorry, doc. Change of guards in the hospital.
It's all right. Yeah, got it.
all right. This is
Thank
something
you.
that we have done since that I've come.
Yes.
This is the first time. So this is those are the discharge medication. And
Dr. Wole?
Yes, ma'am. Once they'll be out in a minute. Thank you very much, ma'am. Please, can you close the door, ma'am? Thank you. Yes. So I'm sorry about that.
Oh, no, don't be.
Yes. So coming to that fork in the road and deciding that is the path I would take was not easy for me. Why? Because I'm not here by myself. I faced death. I was at the point of death in 2016 when I was first informed that I had kidney failure.
Wole, can you please tell us the genesis of this, please?
Yes. Oh,
thank you.
Yes. So 2016, I had actually recently reconnected with my dear brother then in 2015. He knew what I was working on, my project and everything else, and he was also helping me out then. But in early 2016, my company was making a lot of progress as far as the apps we were developing were concerned. I had a few people helping me out, the working that I was paying. And but I also do IT consulting to augment my income while we work on the startup. And so as part of my IT consulting gig, I was going to make a keynote presentation at an ISACA annual event in Portland. So anyway, before I headed out, I had fallen sick by the flu. I didn't even know it was the flu. I just knew I was sick, and this thing come and go. You take care of it. So I was believing that it would take care of itself over time and it would go away. Unfortunately for me, the flu did not go away for weeks, but I was strong enough to drive to Portland the day I drove to Portland, and that was a Monday. On a Wednesday was the keynote address and was the convention I was attending and I was supposed to be presenting at. On Tuesday, I stopped by at a friend's place. Before then, when I was in Portland, because I was sick, I had also consumed tonic water, which, by the way, contains chloroquine. So on Tuesday, I'd stopped by at a friend's place who owns a restaurant, a Lebanese restaurant. And I was, through the food I ate, I was exposed to fava beans. I don't know what those things mean initially. I never thought any of those things were dangerous to my health. But on Wednesday morning, that's when I saw Shege. uh, I had a meeting with a friend in the morning that I needed to meet with him. He works at the SBA. So I drove to that. I was very sick, but not as bad as it became. So I drove to the venue of that meeting, parked in a garage. The garage was across the street from the cafe where we're going to hang out and meet. Once I parked my car in the garage, walking from my car to the cafe took forever. Why? My legs were like lead. They couldn't move, like it wasn't mine. I was so weak. I got to the restaurant after a lot of effort. Cafe after a lot of effort. He came in, we sat down, we started chatting. 5 minutes in, he said, "Wole, you're not well." I said, "Okay, I'll be fine. I'll handle it." And one thing led to the other. He called his physician, his doctor, and said, "Please, can you take my friend in? Let's do a workup on him." I ended up in the doctor's office around 3 o'clock that afternoon. And once they did the workup, the doctor said, "Your kidneys have shut down." He said, "You have to go to the hospital." I was still bravadoing. I was going to drive myself. He said, "No, you're not driving anywhere." He called the ambulance, took me to the emergency room at Providence Hospital in Portland. And there I was for the next 3 weeks. And over the next 3 weeks, the diagnosis kept changing. It was once HUS, which was caused by food poisoning. I said, "Well, this is not food poisoning. I started being sick about 6 weeks ago. Food poisoning would have resolved itself in 6 weeks, not in 2 days." So if we're still here 6 weeks ago, it can't be food poisoning. Then, okay, maybe it's hypertension. Well, check my medical history. Malignant hypertension doesn't just happen in 2 days. It takes a while to get there. Do you see any hypertensiveness in my history? I have very long medical history. And I requested for all my medical record from my previous doctor in Baltimore, and everything was sent, almost 10 years worth of medical record. There was no story about hypertensiveness. I run multiple miles a day, basically every day of the week. I go hiking. I do all the good stuff. And I am extremely careful about what I eat. So I'm trying to figure out what really could be wrong. And because the diagnosis they kept giving me didn't add up. Anyhow, long story short, the final diagnosis was I had AHUS, atypical hemolytical uremic syndrome. They informed me, I was hearing all of that for the first time. They informed me that AHUS affects 10,000 people in the world. It's a genetic disorder, but it's very rare and it's a killer. And the one thing that kept me asking questions was, one, there is no easy way to specifically say AHUS is the cause of of a organ failure. They just kind of exclude everything else, and then they narrow it down to that. And so that was a problem for me. I would like to know exactly what went wrong. Two, once they told me it was AHUS, they told me if I don't get on a series of cocktails that was manufactured by only one company in the world. It's called a Kumelab. and which is also extremely expensive, which, by the way, would itself kill me at some point, that I only had less than 6 months to live. My world was turned over. And while I was in the hospital and I was told I was going on dialysis. I contemplated asking them to stop treatment.
How old were
Because
you at this time?
This was 2016, I was 42.
You were 42. So fast
Yes.
forward, what then happened? How did you get,
Yeah.
because we know you were misdiagnosed, but then
Yes.
what is your diagnosis?
So after, and so I didn't stop there. Once I got back to Seattle, all I did was trying to find answers. What exactly is going on? I mean, well, so I was told it's AHUS. I did all my research on AHUS. There was nothing definitive about it. So I was still concerned. And plus, even if I got a kidney transplant with AHUS, there's no guarantee that it won't come back. So I was confused, and I went to different places looking for answers. And at the end of the day, I moved back to Maryland. While I was looking for answers, I started collecting data. Every lab test, every food, everything. I started collecting all sorts of data about myself. Thank God for those data. Long story short, with data analysis and all the other stuff, at some point I created an app for nutrition. At the end of the day, I stumbled on G6PD deficiency. And the more I read, the more it looks like a fit. It explained everything that has happened to me since I was a child. And there was an article was written a year before I started getting sick. And that article basically said, if a patient comes to the hospital and presents with symptoms that you think is AHUS, test them for G6PD deficiency. I took that information to my nephrologist and requested a test. And there it was, I was G6PD deficient. But in that process, I had exhausted my resources. And now, I've done so many, and I'm talking about almost 4 years after the first date. So this has been going on for almost 4 years. I've had so many surgeries and so many medications that were bad for me over the years. I have developed a GI problem, and things were just going down and down and down. And here I am also getting more and more broke. I ended up falling extremely sick after 2 back-to-back major surgeries in 2019. Close to the end of 2019, I wasn't so much contemplating suicide as I was finally getting ready to die. I was cleaning up the house. I was resigned to it because I kept getting worse and worse and worse and worse. I didn't expect that I would live beyond 2019, but I did. I bounced back by late December of 2019, thank God. And then COVID happened. When I said I bounced back, it doesn't mean that I was strong or I could run around, but I started seeing that I could be better, right? I was beginning to heal gradually. It was slow and steady, but it was definitely improving. Then COVID happened and everything shut down. And so I couldn't even really go out and try to hustle, even though I was weak, but I would have tried. By the time the window was getting shut on COVID, I was beginning to owe money, back rent. I wasn't strong enough to really do anything. If I could walk quarter of a mile, I praise God for that day. Right? I couldn't. Many days I can't even get to the grocery store, which is next door to me. So things are unraveling all around me. And that's what's brought us to what happened in the last couple of weeks. Everything had unraveled. So I wasn't making an irrational decision, at least in my own judgment. I was making a very clear and rational decision to take my life. And the point at the end of the day is this, as far as this talk is concerned. Sometimes when we hear of people on suicide, all sorts of thoughts go through our mind. But when people are suicidal or need help, it is not always true it's because they are sick. Sometimes they have become completely hopeless. Platitudes won't help them. Sometimes it actually pushes them in the direction of suicide. Because when someone is sick and weak and tired like I was, and all he hears is make this phone call, make that phone call, even the phone calls tire me out. So everything that was being thrown at me, where people probably thought, oh, we're helping him. And yes, they were doing their best they could, but they weren't helping me. Because at the end of the day, I have to sit down and look at what's the facts in front of me. I remember a friend when I told him the last days are close by, he said, wait for the last day. And I smiled to myself that, so when the last day comes, what am I going to do then? Do I wait until I'm thrown out on the street? Because once I'm thrown out on the street, I no longer have a bed. So sometimes...
Why is a bed important to you, Wole?
Dignity.
How about
dignity.
How about dialysis?
Dialysis.
Dialysis
is, yes. So when I say bed, it basically encompasses having a home.
Yes.
Yes.
I understand.
It's not necessarily. It's not necessarily a real bed. Yes.
I'm trying to carry our audience along because when you said a bed, people may not understand. Wole dialyzes at home. He does
5 to 6 times a week. Yes.
5 to 6 times a week. So he needs the equipment, where to put the equipment, electricity, water, stuff like that. So on the street, it cannot live on the streets. It can't even live. It cannot be in a homeless shelter. That's the point. And that was why, when he talked to me, he said, ma'am, if you remember what you told me, you said, ma'am,
unknown caller,
what are my options?
Yes.
Remember? You said, what are my options?
Yes.
On the street, I'm going to die. So I'd rather die in my bed. Those were your exact words. So to summarize, at age 41, a young man on the verge of just exploding in this multi-million-dollar company, being called all around to speak. I posted just the first paragraph of his dossier in the chat box because it's too long for me to read. And I don't want to call it misdiagnosis because this is a difficult one to diagnose. But of importance is that Wole has had anemia since he was a child from Nigeria. He had anemia that nobody worked up, nobody thought about. It could function. if you have anemia, if your hemoglobin, if it's not too low, you will function, you'll be fine, and that's how he had lived his life. So G6PD deficiency, if he knew he had it, he would never have been in this state, because he just needed to avoid a few things: aspirin, fava beans that he had that night in hummus, camphor, those mothballs that people throw into clothing in Nigeria.
Yeah, into tomato, yes, mothball.
Mothballs.
Yes, the blue ink that they use for marking people's body, hernia, and simple things, penicillin.
Simple things.
Yes, penicillin.
Sulfonylureas, an antibiotic called the sulfonylurea class.
Yes.
I told Wole when I first met him, I said, if he had HIV when HIV was still difficult.
Yes.
I told him, I said, then people came to us. I was treating them with full-blown AIDS. So we protect them with Bactrim, which is a sulfonylurea. So when they come in, the first set of labs that I got routinely, and I'm sure most of my peers did, included G6PD deficiency testing. I test for it routinely because I want to know that they don't have it, so I don't give them sulfonylurea. I said, see, if you have had AIDS, then we'll be saying, oh my gosh, he had HIV, he has AIDS, but you won't be in this predicament because you will know that you have G6PD deficiency. And today, we treat HIV like we're treating diabetes or high blood pressure, 1 pill a day. You're good, as long as you're taking your medication. I told him that God knows what he's doing. But thank God also that it is not hemolytic uremic syndrome, because Wole still has the chance of getting kidney transplant and living, much better life, because new kidneys will not be damaged, as opposed to if it was hemolytic uremic syndrome.
Yes.
Yes, it would occur again. So there is hope. So if you have questions, by the way, this is still Medical Mondays. You have questions, you can raise your hands or write it in the chat box and I'll read it. And by the way, I want to acknowledge the NPs and DNPs, psychiatrists, counselors, physicians on this forum. There are quite a bit this evening because they all came to see how we can fix this. Thank you. Thank you for coming. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Doc.
You're welcome. Does anyone have any questions for Wole?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
All right, thank you, Doctor. I'm trying to connect all the dots here. As a layperson, a non-doctor, and as somebody who hasn't gone through this before, I'm trying to make the connection from how Wole jumped from I'm being evicted to okay, this is the end of the world for me. What if you're being evicted and you go to a homeless shelter? I just want to get in Wole's head and try to understand why it jumped. I mean, I don't want to say jump. He reached that conclusion, or he took out the other fork of the road. What would have happened? What would be the implication? What's the medical implication or health implications of you going to a temporary shelter? Wole?
So, yeah, it all depends on the shelter. So, but the average shelter is a common use environment. From 2012 until now, I wear a mask in the presence of others. And why do I do that? My immune system is horrible, very low. I keep a track of my blood work every 2 weeks. I get the results, I analyze them, I look at them. If anything gets confusing, I do research to figure out what it is, and I keep tab. So my numbers are not encouraging. And when COVID came, I also did my research and all the other stuff. And the conclusion was with my nephrologist, uh, the vaccine, nobody can say whether it's safe or not for me. So I avoided the vaccines. In order to compensate for that, I kept my mask on. If I walk out of my room in my apartment, I put on the mask, even if there's nobody on the corridor. I self-select everything. So 3 people in the elevator wearing mask, myself included, that's the maximum for me. Yes.
Okay, let me interject and help there. In a homeless shelter, it will stand a higher risk of getting infected. Wole has a port in his chest. A port is an opening that is put there through which he dialyzes.
And that port is a few inches, the end port of that port is a few inches from my heart. It goes through the major artery that is on the on the right-hand side. So everybody says it. If you expose that to infection, the answer is most likely death. I go through a 40-minute routine 2 to 3 times a week to clean my access, to the point where my doctors were very proud and happy. Normally, they would discourage having a chest port, but I had a left-hand port, fistula, and I also had a graft. If you look at my right hand now, it looks like a gutter, the Nigerian gutter, that is a deep wound. The wound has healed many years later, but the deep wound is still there. Actually, it was those 2 surgeries that I had in 2019, one to remove the graft and the other one to put in a fistula. The fistula did not work. That drained me to the point where I thought I was seeing the end in 2019. So I have maintained my chest port since, I had it before I had the fistula, but since the fistula got bad and it was replaced, I've maintained my chest port since essentially January of 2019 till now. And that's because of my own personal attention and care and the environment in which I take care of it. My experience when others have to do it, very qualified nurses and had to do it, is that it leaves, as a matter of fact, while nurses were still the one handling it, I got infected. And it was caught quickly.
That is correct. That is
yes.
correct. But Omo Akogun, dialysis cannot be done in a homeless shelter. Actually, one of Sister Karen wrote that in the chat box. Your question is fantastic. It's a very good question, but that was the deal. And not just that, the homeless shelter has to accept him even. Nobody had responded to his calls. I did not call homeless shelters because I knew that was not an option. Did that answer your question?
Oh, yes, doctor. Thank you.
Thank you. Auntie Tawa, you can unmute, please, and answer and ask your question. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I just want to know, you said he does his dialysis at home. Is it on hemodialysis or peritoneal dialysis? Because peritoneal...
Yes, and this is the reason I didn't do peritoneal. So when the options were presented to me between hemo and peritoneal, of course, when you're in acute setting, you do hemo. Well, I was in Seattle all the time. I was still on hemo. When I moved back to Maryland, that's when the options were presented, hemo or peritoneal. But before then, I'd had a terrible experience. And what was that experience? I got into a fluid overload situation. Doctor's error. Long story short, I was in a coma as a consequence of that, intubated, and I was in a coma for 4 days, almost a week. Holy Cross. And so when I came out and the conversation was hemo or peritoneal, peritoneal requires that the fluid gets into you, stays there for a while, and you remove it later. I can't guarantee that I can survive that. So I stuck with emo. So that's why I'm on emo. And so I do hemodialysis at home 5 to 6 times a week.
Thank you. So there's a question here. Thank you, Ma. There's a question here that, did you have a support system, family, medical team at the critical times?
Well, so the thing is this: I live alone, and I have lived alone throughout all of this. The kind of support I've gotten was a friend here and there giving me some money or passing a job along to me that I can do and earn something. And my sister, with the little she could afford, she helps me out monthly, but she's in Chicago. No, I live alone. There was even a time when to find someone to help me get to grocery store, because I wasn't strong enough to do so, was essentially impossible. We looked and 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 didn't find anyone. So it's, yes. So I wouldn't say I don't have any human being in my orbit, but support system, I came back from the hospital, I had a wound vacuum on my left hand with a massive gashing in the wound on my left hand. And I have to cook my meals. I have to clean the house. I have to set up my dialysis machine. Basically, every single thing you need to do, I have to do them. As a matter of fact, I had to clean the wound. So when you had full wound vacuum, you have to change it and clean and all the other stuff. I had to do that too by myself. Yes.
So Dr. Wole,
yes.
There is no real support. It lives alone, but not. I want everybody to be able to ask their questions. Is why I introducing Dr. Bola Omotosho. Kindly unmute and ask your questions, sir. Thank you.
Oh, hi. Good.
Hello. You muted again. You muted yourself. Kindly unmute. Okay. There you go.
Can you hear me now? Yes, I believe.
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay.
Welcome.
Thank you, Dr. O, for bringing Wole to us this evening. I mean, this is real life experience and hearing it directly from him. My question is not actually a question, but also a request. I believe you probably might have explored that opportunity as well. Dialysis is one of the conditions that allows you to have Medicare and some other basic things. I'm in New York, which is a little bit more flexible with Medicaid and Medicare. I don't know how much of it you were able to explore and back in Maryland. And of course, here in New York, it also entails housing, meaning that just God forbid, what you experienced a couple of days ago, if you were admitted to the hospital and your landlord said you cannot return, the hospital won't throw you out. The social worker will definitely make sure that they find you somewhere to stay and be whatever it might be. You've contributed to the community, to the society, you've paid your taxes, and all of us on this forum are still paying taxes, which is why the support system, even with or without immediate family, will also be able to help you to get by on a day-to-day basis. So that's why I say it's not really a question, but also a suggestion if it's something you've not done already.
Dr. Omotosho, I want to interject there. You know, New York is amazing. In fact, I have two of my children in New York just shared with me the emergency Medicaid for visitors, people who don't even have papers that need emergency care, surgeries, whatever, chemo in New York. We in Maryland are not that bad, but we had an experience. I wish Councillor Rosemary, if she's on the platform tonight, she had a little bit of a conflict. I don't know if she's back yet. She will let you know that we had a gentleman that we were caring for, ended up in the hospital. And because he didn't have anywhere to stay, when the hospital didn't know what to do and all that, I will not mention the name of the hospital, they put him in our Uber and basically threw him on the streets. It was a gentleman who saw him, that this man is going to die on the streets, that picked him up again and took him to Howard University hospital. It's a long story. I don't want to go into it on a platform like this, but there are other reasons also why Wole could not access such care. If he had gone to the hospital that day, the sheriffs will come, they will throw out his dialysis machines, his properties and all of that. That has nothing to do with the hospital. So it's not like it's just his clothing and properties that are at risk or danger here. He has equipment that would be thrown out because, I mean, they are to evict him. And then when the hospital discharges him, to where was the question. So, I mean, the system, states are different.
Yeah, because, well, if you don't mind, let me just take 2 more minutes. Here
Please.
in New York City, I also participate in quite a number of organ donation drive, especially for the African community.
Yeah.
And there's a very huge support system for same sibling or family donor coming from Africa, that from any of the countries in Africa to support there, and they get into the list, and the system also supports housing, even the visitor somehow, so that's
We
why
need
I'm
to
just
talk.
and
We'll talk offline. We need to talk. Please.
Okay.
We need to talk. Dr. Motosho, I'll be calling you.
No problem, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you.
And, I want to take a minute to just thank and appreciate Chief Deji. Chief Deji Akomolafe from the West Coast. He was the one who got Dr. Malcolm Fabi to, to contact me, or it was the one who contacted Dr. Malcolm. And I just want to appreciate him. I want to thank him. I know he's on the platform. Thank you.
He's done, yes, and he's done much more than that for me. Yes.
So I believe so. We appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. He's my brother.
Thank you. Dr. Malcolm, I hope you're there. You won't talk. I know Dr. Malcolm is pissed off that I told you all that he coughed up $2,000 just like that, unplanned. He's pissed off, but I'll deal with that later. So, Dr. Kayode, you have your hand raised. Go ahead and ask your question, please. Kindly unmute.
Yes.
You're still muted.
Thank you for wearing your mask, sir.
There you go.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. It's actually more of a comment. I'm not sure it's not a question as such. I think it depends on what kind of hospital you're dealing with as well. Because I think if you stick with tertiary centers, tertiary hospitals, they do have these kind of programs that the previous gentleman was just talking about, where if upon discharge and you don't have a place or your housing is at risk, they call it unstable housing, I should say. They actually would keep you longer another couple of weeks, and in the meantime, make arrangements to find a place for you. Now, I'm not familiar with other centers like local or regional centers, but I know the tertiary centers, like the big research-based hospitals. I'll be surprised if they just throw you on the street, because they do have funding and programs for these kinds of things.
Yeah, University.
This kind
I
of
was going to
situation.
say, University of Maryland was in
University
a
of
newspaper. University of
Yeah.
Maryland
Yeah,
was in a newspaper a few years ago. I think it was 2019 or so,
right.
for throwing a man out on the street.
Yeah, I see. Yeah.
And
And
it's-
I just said, we just experienced one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rosemary and we just
Yeah.
experienced one. It was thrown on the streets.
My experience was with the
My No.
my experience.
Anything láti bá yín sọ.
Sorry about that. Adiola was talking to someone. Sorry.
Yeah, my experience was with Johns Hopkins, and I think where you get your care from, it's very important too. If you have this kind of condition, I mean, pretty much everything you said, I can relate to 100% of everything you said, because it seems like everything I have lived myself, and hence that experience with Johns Hopkins. But I think perhaps one most significant factor is the support system you have around, right? I think when Dr. O called me about 3 or 4 weeks ago, a few weeks ago anyway, and mentioned this situation, it sounded as though she was narrating my own story for me as well, and I immediately could relate, and I felt I could do something. But what I felt worried about was having somebody with very chronic condition not having a reliable help around. I think that's very important. When you say when you say, yeah, you have friends and
Thank you.
people but you just don't have the kind of support that that you could rely on for a situation like this. I think that's one very important factor to be able to have somebody there that you can. You're not gonna be able to do a lot of things, as you said. I was telling somebody recently how I went months not able to take a shower, and not able to care for myself. And not because people don't call or people don't occasionally, stop by, but there just wasn't that level of help you needed for somebody to care enough to stop asking you questions, but just do what they can do. Is it like, can I help clean your house? Do you have laundry to do that I can help with? There are people who seemingly think they're helpful, but they ask all these questions and make all these phone calls that you don't feel like taking anymore. But they never really, there's no tangible help. I'm not even talking about money, right? I'm talking about just things like food, when was the last time you ate? Well, what would you like to eat? Can I go get you food? Very. So I think for me, having that support that you can reach out to is very important. I told Dr. O that I was in the process of moving myself because I don't feel like I have that support system. Mm-hmm. That is the single factor for me. The reason why I would be moving is because I just don't see a genuity in people reaching out to meet you at that point of view. You can call a zillion times, you can, people come and go and then you never hear from them anymore, but so there's help, and then there's really the kind of help you need to lift you up. And so I think that.
So, Dr. Coyote, I agree with you. Yeah. I agree with you. And that's why we're here to expose what is going on in our communities, the needs we have, and see how we can meet it. I was, very impressed by you, your very first Medical Mondays. You talked about the fact that you have sickle cell anemia and, and what you're going through, you can, and all that. And that is very important. I'm glad that you had the opportunity today to even speak more as to what your needs are. And guess what? The grace of God, before the end of this meeting, let's keep going, because that's the purpose of Medical Mondays, to see how we can, things can meet. You have a mansion there. You live in a mansion alone, was why I called you.
Well, I don't have a mansion.
No, wait a minute. So I called you that this young man, Wole Akpose, can cook. He takes his chair, he sits, he cooks. But I get, I understand the fact that your concern, two people that are invalid.
My concern, Dr. O, if you recall, my concern was having two adults, almost middle-aged, sadly middle-aged, living with chronic conditions without any help around.
But I told you we will provide the help, but let's leave that for a bit, because I don't want. Look, I have a lot of hands. Let's leave it for a bit, because we can converse here, because those helps can actually occur. I already have a lot of private chats asking me, how can they help? How can they intervene? I have a lot in the chat box. Let's see, Dr. Coyote, the Lord God Almighty would intervene for you, for Wole, and for others who have not spoken up, or that will speak up. So I'll revert back to you in a minute. I just want us to go to Dr. Izugu. Kindly unmute. Thank you, sir.
Sure, thank you. Well, Dr. O, you are now Mama O. Thank you really for bringing issues like this to us. You are going beyond just being a doctor to really, taking care of people and where the needs are. And I appreciate that, and we thank you so much on behalf of everybody in this forum. Wole,
yes, sir.
You are a very smart man. I mean, I've heard you discuss. I've had the difficulty you've gone through. I've heard the voice, the way you talk. What is happening to you is actually for a higher purpose, okay? First of all, I want to ask, have the other family members in your family been tested for G6PD deficiency?
Fortunately for me, the only family members I have are women. My sister and my mom. They are less likely to be to have two X chromosomes affected by G6PD deficiency. However, I have reached out to everyone I know. My sister, my late sister, has 2 male sons, and I've reached out to my mom to see if they can get them tested. I wrote an article on G6PD deficiency and posted it on my newsletter. And I have spoken to my members of my alumni and explained to them that this is a problem that affects mostly people of our demography, and encourage them to test. Question is, do people listen when you tell them? But I wish somebody had told me, although I'm not sure that if they've told me, I would have heard what they were saying, given the fact that I didn't have any symptoms and I didn't have anything to do. But at the same time, I think I try to tell my friends, the people I know around me, that look, if it affects me, it could affect you. Learn a lesson from me. Get tested. So I'm evangelizing that in my own ways. I would love to continue to do that. As a matter of fact, I started writing from the very moment this thing started. I started keeping a journal. So I kept a journal of my interactions with doctors, medications, and throughout this journey. And I started trying to put that into a book form. Well, I've been too sick to think of much of that late. I mean, not sick, I've been too bombarded to think of much of that lately. But I would like to complete a book that doesn't just talk about G6PD deficiency, but my whole journey. And hopefully some people can learn from that.
Wole, somebody is asking for your newsletter link in the I don't know if you can put that in the chat box, but they ask.
I can't do that right now because it's a phone and there's all these limitations.
Okay,
but I
you know
will
what?
send
You
you.
can send it to me later, and I will send it.
I'll send you a link later.
Okay.
And please feel free to pay for subscription, because it would also be a revenue generator for me. So as I walk through this journey, I'm also looking for every ways to raise revenue. So the newsletter was supposed to be a vehicle. It's on Substack. Was to be a vehicle to raise revenue, which will be organic, continuous, and I will be contributing something for the resources that people provide. So yes, I will send you the link again, Dr. O. Yes, ma'am, I will.
Okay, so I just have a few more comments on that.
Go ahead, sir.
Yes, sir.
So, and from what I'm hearing from you, you are able to do remote work, and most would be able to do remote work in the area of computer and technology and stuff like that.
Yes, cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, machine learning. Yes.
So that if somebody were to introduce you to, app companies, you could be able to look into that and working within these 30 days that we have room for, right?
Yes.
We have longer than 30 days, sir. The 30 days, Dr. Malcolm paid for that accommodation to buy us time so that we can at least move him out of where he was and is not evicted and situated. Now we're working on a permanent solution.
Right.
Permanent housing.
Okay.
Yes.
Beautiful.
So yes, you can introduce him, sir. His mind is also a little bit at rest. This young man has not, it blows my mind that he's even still this calm,
Amen.
After all this saga of 7 years. Now, hopefully, I can see the difference in this couple of days that his mind is maybe a little bit more at rest. And he can now maybe focus on the needful, on working and stuff like. He's not lazy.
No, I don't think I sense any laziness. Are you willing to relocate, like to New York, as we're talking about? And are you willing to downsize what you have to just the bare minimum?
Oh, somebody wrote in there that he should move to New York. I think those things should be explored. I'll talk to Dr. Motosho.
Yeah, if you're willing to do some of those things, these that really this again is this is a higher purpose than
yes, sir. As far as downsizing is concerned, my 1-bedroom apartment is less than 750 square feet.
Okay.
So my point being, it's as small as it gets. Right? That's where I was living. I don't live ostentatiously because so when I moved to Maryland, I knew I was sick. The focus was my health. And it wasn't any ostentation. I don't drive anymore. The last time I drove was 2019. So it's not like I have any kind of largesse or any kind of extra comfort at all at my disposal. It's just the basics: a bed, my equipment, and when you do dialysis at home, you get about 40 boxes of supplies every month. They come in and you use them throughout the month. So enough space to accommodate those. And when you come to my space, if I'd taken pictures of that, you would find out that there's barely enough room to move around in my space. So it's not about size. It's not about downsizing. I don't have a problem with that. As far as moving to New York, I have no problem if I get support. I have no problem if I get support. So I'm not as picky as it might seem. But it's just that I try to be rational, understand that this is the path I have, and how do I make the best use of it? Yes.
Wole is very intelligent, and he.
Very good. Very
so,
good.
Dr. Sugu, you know about that. We know that.
Yeah.
So, thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Thank
So,
you.
we have psychiatrists, our own very psychiatrists. I mean, the best of the best amongst us, Dr. Ojimba. Kindly unmute. He has his hand raised. Kindly unmute. Thank you. You're muted.
Okay, thank you, Dr. O, and good evening, everybody. Dr. Wole, I sympathize with your situation. I definitely do understand it's a tough one and very difficult. Not just sometimes it's difficult to understand what people go through. If you don't wear that shoe, you probably may not be able, no matter how you try to imagine it or try to think that you understand. And you made actually some important points, which I think I didn't talk so much about it, but I just kind of mentioned it briefly during one of my presentation on Medical Mondays when I said that, sometimes suicidal ideation in itself is not because that somebody has a mental illness. It could just be an isolated incident based on what we call other psychosocial stressors that people might be facing in their life. And I guess this is one of those occasions. I remember during the COVID, I had two publications on two teenagers. Young adults, 18 and 19, with no history of mental illness, but just because of the situation, the psychosocial stress of that COVID came on with. Actually, one ran fabulosa and nearly died, was admitted to the hospital. The other one also was on verge of doing something, and then she was brought to the hospital. And when I sat down and spoke to them, it was just things that they were going through, those moments causing a lot of stress. And sometimes it can be very tough. So in psychiatry, that is one thing that we take, like even in medical school, they will fail you if you ever, in the course of your psychiatric examination, don't ask about suicidal ideation. You could have done every other thing, but if you fail that, of course, you've killed the patient, because sometimes people won't tell you. Not everybody actually has that ability to be able to tell you that, oh, this is the way I'm feeling. So when people say that, we want to take it very, very serious. And that's what we call doing a suicidal risk assessment. It's a way of kind of looking at a whole bunch of what we call predisposing factors that can actually lead to people to be able to feel that way. And it ranges from genetic, from racial. Some races have more suicidal tendencies compared to others. Uh, um, and then come down to things like mental illness. It goes down to things like medical condition, especially terminal illnesses and chronic medical condition like end-stage renal disease condition, other chronic terminal illnesses like cancer, incurable cancers. They're the most predictive of suicidal attempt is prior attempt. That's number one, that if somebody has ever done something like that in the past, we don't just take chances. Then most importantly, like things like support system, very, very important. I know a lot of people have talked about it. A good support system is very, very important. And that support system, of course, it could range from family support system, a good social support network, and it could a religious belief and cultural beliefs. Some cultures don't believe in suicidality, so people and really, religion wise. So that's quite a lot of factors that we consider. And then you look at other things, what we call positive predictive values. When people are married, they have kids, there are things that they look out for, that they can look at and say, if not because of this, so there are some positive predictive factors, and then you have all the negative ones, and then you balance out and you determine and say if this person is of high suicidal risk. But again, all these things from experience and from what we have known, as much as we have done all these things, sometimes it helps, sometimes it doesn't. People who really want to kill themselves, they won't even say anything and they'll just do it. We have seen, and the suicidality is not a respecter of anybody. It's not status or age or this thing. We have seen it. The young and the old, the rich and the poor. So the least we can do as humans, human beings, and as people, as a community, is to when we see someone in such situation, of course, it's much easier for me as a psychiatrist or as a mental health professional who probably have a training to be able to make this analysis, to be able to understand when things like this are going on. But as lay person who may not understand what is going on in the mind of other person, they may not understand actually. So the least we can do is kind of also, that's why it's good to, I'm actually saying so that we can create awareness. So when people, cry to us and come to us and say, oh, see the way I'm feeling. Even for us, when someone tells you I'm hopeless, as a psychiatrist, that's actually a deeper meaning to me. Sometimes somebody might tell us, oh, I'm hopeless, and we're like, oh, come on, what's going on? Why are you hopeless? Come on, cheer up. Not everybody have that resilience. Resilience is vary from people to people. So I think maybe being able to, even when we don't know and somebody comes to us and say, see the way I'm feeling sad. When someone tells us I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling low, a lot of things is going on in my mind, and we're like, why are you feeling that way? What is going on? Do you need some help? Do you want to talk to somebody? So and when someone come to us and want to be able to open up, let's also see if it's something, if like what Dr. O did, sometimes we may not be able to even though she's a physician, but she kind of rallied around and called a lot of people, get other people involved. Sometimes we may not be able to do it alone. We just have to call or get involved other people who can help and probably have a different ideas and a different opinion and also expertise that can help to support that particular individual. I know before she started, she just talked about a 15-year-old that just died today, committed suicide, and another young adult that died like 2 months ago from suicidality. There's been an uptake of suicide in our community, overall. And it's something that we really have to take serious. Sometimes when people come to us, let's just not, or even ourselves when we're feeling some certain way, let's just encourage each other to express ourselves in the best possible way possible. Like don't feel ashamed about it. Don't feel like you're saying something. The way you feel makes you a weak person. No, it doesn't make you any weak. Rather, it can actually save and help you. So I may not be able to go in full detail, but my own encouragement and I want to applaud you, Dr. Wole, for being able to talk to someone because, like you said, if you had wanted to do it, you could have done it without even talking to anybody. I mean, we won't be here today talking about this, but you were able to talk to somebody. And that is one thing we want to encourage everyone and people that we know. Let's just encourage people to be able to express themselves, or whenever they feel some certain way, especially when it comes to suicidality, because that is the hallmark. I mean, when someone dies, that's the end. Nothing else is left, and we should take it seriously, and also use words, I mean, that can be very encouraging and supportive. I know that sometimes back home, we've been trending some certain way. We have things like say, "Come, monitor for this and that," and but as the whole essence of life is just for us to have an open mind and learn. We don't stop learning until we die. We realize that sometimes there's some positive part of our culture that has helped us. But on the other hand, there's some part of our culture that is not that's not helping us and probably causing more harm than good. So and one of those is just like not being emotionally supportive and not being able to help, but we feel like we can, even when people are going through tough times, we could easily say, "Oh, why is this person feeling this way? Or why this person? Are you not strong enough? Are you not man enough? And religion actually is one of those positive factors that we have used and helped us, and also helping a lot of people. So religion is very, very good. Whatever religion that one believe that have, I don't think I've seen any religion not something that kind of preaches suicidality. So that is a good one. Having such affiliation with a religious body that supports and kind of encourage and motivate and support is also one of those keys and corners, the cornerstones that we can use to build our resilience, as we journey through life, So because I always say that life in itself is it's not that it's a bumpy road that goes up and down, and each and every one of us at any, it may not be, our cases may not be the same, but we encounter things in life that kind of make us challenge us and have to make us use some of our coping skills and be able to stand. So right now is the turn of Dr. Wole. I know that in whatever we can do as community, ideas, opinion, Tenga. I mean, like I forgot the doctor that said about New York. That's why I trained in New York and I love New York. New York has one of the generous mental health system in the country. They have a lot of a lot that they use to support the system. So New York is actually a good place. So if we can find a good resources in New York and have people who can help, and that'll be awesome. So whatever we can do, one thing I want to encourage you is that you have done so well for all these years, and don't give up. If you need, don't think you can do it. I mean, if you need like a therapy, we have people, we have therapists who can be there. It could be a pro bono. You don't have to pay, but I know people can volunteer to give you a therapy session. Like a weekly or bi-weekly, just to be able to. That's also one of the support system that you can get. To be able to continue to move around and know that your situation is not the end. It's not the end. I mean, what you're seeing is one of those challenges in life that we face. Is tough. Like I said, I can't just imagine being in your shoe, because as a young person, what you've been through over the past 7 years, and it's a lot. With and unemployment, like that's one of those things, that's one of those social stressors, unemployment, lack of finances. I've seen a lot of my patients, just unemployment, from unemployment you have lack of finances, and then homelessness. These three social stressors alone can make someone commit suicide. That alone. So I can understand, like I can understand based on the theoretical aspect, because I haven't been in your shoe. So just be firm and be positive. Can continue to move on.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you so much, because you have helped me conclude the psych part of this. I don't have to revisit it. We appreciate you. And thank you for what you do in the community too. I just got an update also that the Nigerian girl who committed suicide this morning, painful. It's actually 19, not 15, at University of Maryland. They're gonna more information is going to be released. So that was the update I got. Thank you so much, Dr. Ojimba. I appreciate you. I have, oh wow, I have Mr. Gbenga Ogunjimi, he's my baby, my son, as his hand raised of the Nigerian Center, and I have a question that was asked in the chat box that I had for you, but Dr. Malcolm raised his hand prior, before both of you disappeared on me. So before I bring you on, Gbenga, oh yeah, Malcolm, on mute. On mute, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. O, and
thank you so much. And thank you for providing accommodation for Wole. Thank you.
No, and Wole, thank you so much for just very articulately describing to all of us what you've experienced, what you've gone through. The question that I had for you is, you obviously have incredible skills. You're an IT specialist. You are keen to work. By God's grace and with the help of the community, the accommodation situation will be sorted. But when you described what you could do, it went very quickly over my head, and I'm sure many people's heads. You have a community here of people who are mostly medical experts. Could you describe how your skills can be useful for them in the event that there are people here who potentially can actually provide some type of work, but they might not be sure how relevant it might be to the skill sets that you have? So if somebody was in medical practice, they had a practice that they were running, they have offices, even if they're not in medical practice. There are many of us that are not medical personnel here. We have offices. What are the skill sets that you have that can be applied in almost everyday type work that folks are doing, whether it's consulting, whether it's building things, whether it's just, if you can describe it so that everybody can begin to have an understanding of what type of opportunities they can bring your way.
Yes. So there, thank you, sir. Thank you very much for all you've been doing so far. Thank you very, very much. I'm grateful. And I'm grateful to everybody else on this call and for all your contributions. Thank you. Now, let me try to open a little window into my professional life. I won't be too verbose. Um, I was the chief information officer, not CEO, but CIO of Morgan State University for several years. Prior to that, I was the chief cybersecurity officer, and I was the enterprise architect at another time. All of those roles, of course, I didn't just become the chiefs. I also worked as a regular staff in IT for many years before that. All of those roles are some of the essential roles that organizations need in order to plan and deploy and as well as manage technology in their environment. And that means all of technology. Your medical equipment are usually networked, they are connected, and they also have risk of cyber security exposure. And you probably must have heard of things like ransomware and all the other stuff. Typically, organizations that are not well managed security-wise are the more likely to get exposed. And if you do, even if you're properly managed and you get into that, the question is, how do you reduce your risk and mitigate those risks? Those are skills I have that I can help organizations deal with. You're talking about remote staff, remote working during the pandemic or at any other time, or you're talking about telemedicine. What are the policies you need to put in place to be effective? How do you manage the technology and the resources? Even things like purchasing technology. How do you buy the right set of technology at the right time? These are decisions that in large organizations, the chiefs are the ones that make all those decisions, like the CIO, the CSO, or chief data officer, or whatever that you may have. I have all these skills in me, in one person. So and then of course, some companies can do when they grow, they can hire more people. But there was something I developed over the years while I was still doing consulting. It's called the CXO practice. And the CXO practice basically provides a subscription-based solution to companies that cannot afford to hire a CIO, a CSO, a C this, a C that, because in reality, they can't afford to consume that much quantity for one whole year of CIO services. They don't need it for a whole year. They probably need it for a couple of hours in a month or a couple of hours in a year. Somebody to guide them, write the right paper, coordinate their staff, help them implement the technology and get things rolling. Even talk to vendors and stuff like that. So all of that I can provide to a healthcare provider, a financial services provider, or anybody else who feels like they need real proper guidance at a bargain price. So you get an annual subscription that is extremely affordable depending on the size of your company. And anytime you have issues, you know who to turn to help you out. And even before you have issues, people are talking about crypto, they're talking about artificial intelligence, the roles of artificial intelligence in medicine, how to integrate things like voice recognition, dictations, and all those other stuff that are coming along the pipeline. Rather than the medical director bothering themselves with trying to figure out something that is not their exact industry. As an expert in the field, I do all the research for you. You tell me what you want. I do the research, I do the analysis, I give you a bunch of choices, we discuss it, we analyze it, and you pick the right one. And once you pick it, you're not now left to go and start dealing with the vendors. It's my job now to help you deal with the vendors and make sure you get the right prices, get the right mix of technology. And then when it's time to implement, oversee that process and ensure that it's well done. So I've done this for companies before, and I can continue to do it again. It's something that is very well fleshed out, And I was actually going to send Deji a copy of that when I fell. I was in the middle of typing the update. I was doing some update to the document that I normally share. I was in the middle of typing that update when I fell on Friday. I mean, I felt like going to the restroom. On my way to the restroom, I fell and slipped and ended up in the hospital. I couldn't move. So that's why, Brother Deji, that's why you haven't received that. And sorry, I didn't call you because I didn't want to scare you. I spoke to Dr. Kwesami and I pleaded with her not to tell Dr. Malcolm either because I didn't want to scare him. I feel better now, not strong. I'm going to rehab. And I leave the hospital, they're sending me to rehab and we'll be there for a few days. I still have limited motion, but I'll be fine. I'll be fine. And I'm more lucid now and all that. So I'll try to get to my computer, finish that, and send out the practice documents that I was going to share with my dear brother. And then I can share that with you, to Dr. Malcolm and everybody else on the team, so that you can see some of, not all. But I can tell you one thing, even if you want to build websites, I don't build websites, but I can coordinate the resources to do that, oversee them, ensure that every piece of it is done properly and based on your budget. So if you want to go into the cloud, I can help you get everything you need to get to the cloud. There are lots of things I will do myself, but there are times when you need to coordinate a group of people, a team, to get it done. You want to build an app, we'll talk about it, discuss the merits and lack of it of your plan. And then once we flesh it out, I can help gather the resources together and get things done. As far as technology is concerned, being a CIO means that you oversee all of technology in an organization. I've been there. And I've also been a consultant to companies. Yes, ma'am.
So there's a question here that do you create website, social media marketing, virtual staffing agency?
I don't do that directly, but like I said, I can coordinate the resources to get those things done. So when it comes to website creation, there are agencies that I interact with all the time. When I need to get a website done, I'll call them and work out the details, work the budget out with you, identify exactly what you need to do, and I'll oversee the process like a project manager. So even though I don't build websites myself.
What about social media marketing?
Social media marketing is just like so yes, I can do it directly.
Okay,
yes,
good.
I can do social media.
What about virtual staffing agency?
Virtual staffing is not really IT by itself.
Okay.
So virtual staffing is just human resources.
Okay, so you got a job.
Yes.
Dr. Elisha said, let's talk.
Thank you, Doc. Yes.
He will connect with you through me. You can do it, sir, is what she said. She said, all you do is recruit for people. And she would like you to do that. You can set up your biz. So you got a job from her already. And I'm sure there are many more that will be coming along the way.
Okay.
I'm going to make sure that you don't take too much on. But you got Dr. Elisha, Thank you. And thank you so much, Dr. Malcolm, for that question.
Thank you, Dr. Malcolm.
I appreciate you. Excellent question. So I have a question for Gbenga. If you guys don't know Gbenga Ogunjimi, he started the Nigerian Center in DC. This is a young man who came into the country and within 10 years of coming here started Nigerian Center. Within months of setting up the center, the mayor of DC pronounced October 1st Nigerian Day because of his work at the Nigerian Center. You can learn languages there, all of our Nigerian languages. You can get loans for businesses to start your businesses. When people just come in, or even if they've been here, immigration is huge in the Nigerian Center. They provide immigration services to help people in adjusting papers and doing stuff like that. Getting jobs, there's the bank in DC who has actually, partnered with the Nigerian Center that will give people jobs and then they can move on. The list goes on. I don't want to belabor it, but I can't help myself but to showcase what Benga Ogujumi is doing, what the Lord is using him to do in the Nigerian Center. So the question to you that was asked is that, how could the Nigerian Center have helped Wole, and how can Nigerian Center help Wole now? Now, not only Wole, we also have heard Dr. Kayode. How can the Nigerian Center intervene with Dr. Kayode? Dr. Kayode, I didn't say too much about him. That's another brain.
Yes.
That is another brain. That is, maybe we should allow him sometimes to just talk about himself, but you can see life happened. So the question, Benga, I'm throwing it to you. How could you have intervened not this Sunday before when Wole called me, and how would you intervene now? Please unmute. Thank you. And welcome.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I want to start by thanking you, Dr. Wole, for your resilience. Not a lot of people will have been able to make it this long. You are an inspiration to me personally already. And I want to thank Dr. O for your leadership and your heart for making this platform available and also responding as a mother, as a leader to the cry of our brother, Dr. Wole. So pretty much what Nigerian Center does is what you've described. And I think it's opportunity like this why Nigerian Center came to existence. And we've got a few calls, not to this level of extreme intervention, where people will call the center, they need temporary housing, they are going through homelessness, they're dealing with foreclosures. Primarily now our programs are limited to immigration, financial programs, cultural programs, advocacy and policy, and home ownership. A gentleman mentioned that Dr. Wole's story is for a higher purpose. And I also think this is a really big opportunity. I think when I looked at this call now, there are about 70 people on this call. I think this community
it was 80.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So I think this community is resource rich enough, not just for intervening in Dr. Wole's situation, but also creating a form of resource for other members of our community to have a place to turn to. I want to speculate that probably part of the challenges Dr. Wole is facing of not being able to make the most of his professional skills is because of his housing situation. And also the limitation he has that is dealing with right now. So Nigerian Center is a 501c3. And I think one way we can help Dr. Wole, and not just him, again, it was said that it is for a higher purpose and community at large. I think this community is right as resource rich enough, not just to financially contribute towards his own case, but we can actually put a deposit for some form of temporary house for anyone in this situation going forward. So there are other 501c3 here that we can use. Donation to a center like Nigerian Center is tax deductible. So I think with that, we can put Dr. Wole in some form of temporary housing that is a little bit more on the longer term, mid-longer term. But that resource become available to any other members of our community who is in need of such. Again, this call right now, there should not be a reason why this cannot lead to an immediate intervention. So even let's do the numbers. So I don't know what individual capacity is, but we all give to all causes. We give to our families, we give to our schools, we give to our churches, we give to all kinds of institutions. So I think we can actually contribute towards some form of temporary housing for Dr. Wole. Nigerian Center is a 501c3, so those donations are tax deductible. I think that is one way I think we can use this, not just for him, but for the community as a whole. There are other programs. I should also mention that Washington, D.C. has a Medicaid for All program. I'm not sure how comparable it is to the resources in New York, but Washington, D.C. has something similar or close to that as well. So I think that is one way that we may be able to use the center to intervene to Dr. Wole. So I'm thinking if we right now I'm saying this as a call to action, as an emergency fund that's going to have both immediate and a long-term goal. The immediate goal is to find a center, a housing that we can transition the doctor into. And by the grace of God, when he gets on his feet, and that same resource could be dedicated to the community going forward. So I don't know how we want to do it. If we want to put it in terms of how God lays in your heart in terms of number. So we already heard someone like Dr. Malcolm do $2,000. If each one of us do $1,000, that is $70,000 we can do right. I do appreciate all the expertise that have been communicated earlier, but I think this is the time that we really have to make intervention. So I'm going to stop right there, and I'll just step back to just hear comment. But before I go, I'm not bringing him back, but I'm curious, Dr. Coyote, since you had a story that was similar to Dr. Wole, how you made that transition, what resources was helpful. And to Dr. Wole, I was wondering in terms of faith-based organizations like churches, I'm not if you're a person of faith. There are several Nigerian churches in this area as well. Was that one of the resources you considered? Those are my questions and comments.
Yes. When I moved to Maryland, I joined an Anglican church that wasn't too far from me, Chevy Chase, All Saints Church, Chevy Chase. When things got, and I was quite active, I participated, I volunteered. I was sick, but I was still strong. So I was very active. Everybody knew me, pastor, and all the other stuff. Yes. However, when I got sick, I reached out to them, and it's not very encouraging. That's one. In the middle of this crisis, not too long ago, when I started posting eviction notice, when I started getting eviction notice, I started posting about that on a GoFundMe page that was sent. My sister is a member of the MFM, and so she reached out to the MFM, and promises were made, but well, God knows best. So, and I reached out to Catholic Charities. I've moved the needles I thought I could move. I've moved them. I've tried to move them, but that doesn't mean that churches have not been of help. Pastor Martinez and his team, including his own daughter and nephew that came to help me move, they were also from a church that Dr. Pesami connected. So I can't completely rule out that churches haven't been able to. Yeah, they came to help me move. Otherwise, there was no way I would have been able to move. I didn't have the strength. Yes, but
Thank you.
I've reached out, and it's been mixed results.
Thank you so much. He's right.
Yeah.
Pastor Martinez has been amazing. And that's from my Hispanic community. They were fantastic. So, Benga, I miss, let me say, I don't want to say I missed something, but so the $2,000 Dr. Malcolm paid and the over $1,000 that I paid to move, if we had sent that to Nigerian Center, it would be tax deductible. Is that what I caught from what you said?
That's correct. And the center will be the one to make those payments to those housing institutions.
So because I've had a few people reach out to me that want to contribute tonight, somebody even put a dollar value to what they want to give to Wole. So it's best for them to make those donations to Nigerian Center and put Wole, Dr. Wole there, right?
That's correct.
Dr. Wole.
That's correct. And please, once you make the donation,
okay, go
you
ahead.
can follow up with an email. I'll put the email in the chat. And I'm going to coordinate with you right after the call so we can set up the process going forward. But yes, they can make the donations to the Nigerian Center and send a follow-up email with subject line or email subject Dr. Wole. So that will be allocated specifically for that. And I think every Medical Monday we can give an update status on how much was raised and what is going forward.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Kindly put those information in the chat box for us, please. The the information we need to do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So that way we get tax deductible from, and you can also help us, navigate and handle that. I'm just wondering, with the 70 plus 80 people, and I'm going to send this out by email also. If everybody gives $100, I'm just thinking that's like $7,000, $8,000 right there. But I have people who, have, vouched or, how do you say it? They have promised even more that have private chatted me tonight. So thank you, everybody. Sister Lugutera, she volunteered already to be a counselor to Wole. Kindly unmute. Unmute, please. Thank you.
Okay.
You are welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you, Dr. Wole, for sharing your story. And I can't help but be inspired by what you share and to take lessons from it. I have two things I wanted to say. First, I wanted to add on to what the psychiatrist said earlier, and secondly, to ask a question. So the first thing I wanted to add on is, I believe that, for our community also, I think one of the things that will be helpful for us as individuals and for our families and for our children is to practice what we call mindfulness. Sometimes we can be under the illusion that, we are strong, or we are supposed to be strong all the time. Or maybe we also think that we are people of faith, and so therefore nothing can happen to us, and all of those, the mindset that we can have. But when we are careful to practice mindfulness and to check ourselves emotionally, when we are feeling overwhelmed for whatever reason, it could be schoolwork, it could be trying to handle your family, it could be a job loss, just little things or big things. We have emotions, and when we realize that we are feeling down, it's so crucial that we have somebody on speed dial, whoever that person is. Someone once described, I was at a training one time, and somebody described suicide as, in that moment when people make that decision, they describe it as they're feeling like this heat or this fire behind them, so strong that they cannot quench, and the only way out is to jump through another way because they feel like it's gonna be better, and the only way for it to be better is for them to harm themselves, right? Because in that moment you're feeling that sense of helplessness or being overwhelmed, or some people saying that, I don't necessarily want to die, but I don't know how to live anymore, right? So that's like that, being in that space. And in that moment, people make the decision they make. So yes, people are not necessarily depressed when they get to that place. And it could be any one of us. It could be me. It could happen to anybody. So when we are mindful of this fact that you can all get to that place where we feel like it's too much for us. And especially in the world that we live in now, there's a lot of activity, but very little real, deep, meaningful human connection. And I feel like a lot of us are what we call relational poverty. Like we don't have a lot of people that we're really, really deeply connected to that we can reach out to. So part of our wellness, I will encourage us all to, really be intentional about how we connect and how we care for ourselves and how we find fulfillment and how we take time to reflect on what we're doing, so that we don't find ourselves just being busy and getting overwhelmed in the process. I think that even our younger ones are at higher risk because they are immersed in technology, which also has its own issues. So it's important for us to critically look at what we do, how we keep our homes, how we parent our children, how we uplift each other, the words we say, the places we go to for support. All those things are really important. And I like something that Dr. Wole shared. When someone comes to us and they're overwhelmed, I think the last thing they need is a list of things they have to do. Have you done this? Have you done that? Did you check on this? Because they're already feeling overwhelmed. So every little task is you're tipping them in the wrong direction. And rather, we should be looking to take off, I can call this for you. I can do this, that I can do that. Things that are meaningful to them, to take off the weight off of them rather than piling on more responsibilities of things that they have to do. So that's a very, very key point. We want to be the ones to lighten the load and not to tell them, give them a list of resources and say, hey, here you go. When someone is already feeling overwhelmed, we want to be able to take them some load, excuse me, some of the load off of them. The real question I had was, I think I heard Dr. O saying that if he got a kidney, it will greatly improve his health and his overall wellness outcome. So I'm wondering what the process is for that. And everything we're doing is great and necessary at this time. But I'm wondering if a kidney transplant is something that would be, a long-term solution. What are the steps that we could possibly look into so that while we are doing this for him, we're also looking at that long-term strategy as well. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you so much. They always say it, great minds think alike. So he is on transplant list already. But if I don't know, you were on, Dr. Motoshaw mentioned something, if you have a family member or a friend that can donate kidney to you or an organ, then it's faster. I mean, you got the organ donor. So we're looking at things like that. Our primary thing right now is to get him situated. And options that come up, we never thought of New York. We never thought of DC. Those are now options on the table to see what would be best for him. And, there are also other things to look at. So, but we will definitely keep you updated on that. Thank you for that question. It's an excellent question. And because we're doing all of this, what is the long term? You heard how he used to run 4 miles a day. And now his endurance has declined over the years. So something needs to be done that will be definite. This man, I believe, like a lot of people had written in the chat box and had said it, that God has a reason and a purpose for his life. And I believe that the Lord would spare him and give him longevity. So thank you for that question. I want to say also that somebody, because I was private chatted, I don't want to say the name, as been one of our speakers here. It's a she. Geez, I don't like to tell you. She has pledged $1,000 for Wole already. I just wanted to say that. And I know somebody else who had pledged $300. But I was private chatted. I don't want to mention this. Maybe, in the future, next week or something, after I chat with them and I get permission, I will, I'll say it. I didn't get permission from Dr. Malcolm. I didn't quite get a straight permission, but I felt that needed to be said. So do you have any other questions? On the platform, Benga had, posted how to donate to Wole. Please write there that it is to Wole. And if everyone can make a pledge now, please, even if you private chat me. We've never done this on Medical Mondays. This is life. And it's part of medicine. It's part of life. We have to save this life. Please, if you can private chat me and make a pledge, or not private chat me, write it openly. I would appreciate it so that, I can also follow up on that. And please, when you donate to him through the Nigerian Center, please email to info@nigeriancenter.org. Benga is going to get it. It's always on point. And so that it can, channel it appropriately and give us the list so we would know what he has. Wow. Benga Ogujimi of the Nigerian Center just said, I didn't know he private chatted me. He just pledged $1,000 too. I didn't realize it was a private chat. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Everyone that has pledged, appreciate it. Kindly, let me know. You can pledge right now, please. We have work to do for this young man. Oh, wow. Sister Wumi Kamsin has completed her donation. She's a no-nonsense person. She does things like this. Boom, boom, boom. That's my sister from California. Thank you so much. And Aduke S. Oh, my God. Sister Aduke has been texting me, how can I help? What can I do? And all of that. So she just donated too. Thank you so very much. Appreciate you guys. These things are private too. I was told some donations are private. And I'm sorry, I'm trying to run through the chats really quickly. Kindly pledge, donate, let me know. Please. We appreciate you all. And keep him in your prayers, please. Any questions, comments? Okay, so Wole, do you have any closing statements you tell us? I just got another private chat for $250. If you private chat me, I guess I'm not supposed to say. I'm sorry for the one I dropped the ball. So Wole, can you give us some concluding statements? Thank you so very much for this donation. Appreciate you.
All I could say is thank you. Thank you. Thank you to everyone who has joined this meeting, donated, prayed, and just have good thoughts. I'm very grateful. I'm very grateful. And I will send out all the necessary information, newsletter, as well as the document, and share with you as soon as I'm stabilized a little over the next couple of days. I will make sure you get them. But I don't know what to say other than thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
You are very welcome, and thank God. On behalf of Medical Mondays family, I say you're welcome, and we're thanking God for you. There's another donation that just came in for $250. I wouldn't say the name, it was private chatted to me. Also, thank you so very much. Thank you. Appreciate you.
Thank you.